Imagine waking up in a village above the clouds, where the nearest road is hours away. Then picture a city squeezed into a gap so narrow that mountains rise beside apartment windows and a river runs below the buildings. Farther north, another community lives through months without sunlight, while polar bears roam beyond town. In the desert, families escape deadly heat by moving underground. And on a remote island in the Pacific, an entire village sits inside an active volcano. These are not movie sets, abandoned ruins, or temporary camps. They are real homes. In this journey, we are traveling to 10 of the most extreme places people live on Earth. Each community faces a different threat: cliffs, floods, freezing darkness, isolation, unbearable heat, or volcanic danger. But the real story is not about how dangerous these places look. It is about why people stayed, how they adapted, and what their lives reveal about the human ability to turn almost any landscape into home. Our first stop is Wae Rebo, a remote mountain village on Flores Island in Indonesia. It sits roughly 1,200 meters above sea level, surrounded by dense forest and rolling clouds. There is no simple drive to the village. Visitors must hike for several hours along a mountain trail before its 7 enormous cone-shaped houses finally appear through the mist. These traditional homes are called Mabaru Niang. Each one rises nearly 15 meters and shelters several families under a single roof. The design is not only beautiful, it supports a communal way of life in which space, work, and responsibility are shared. The Manggarai people established the village more than a century ago, and for generations it remained separated from much of the modern world. Before electricity arrived, firelight illuminated the houses while stars filled the night sky. Every morning, clouds climb from the valley and wrap around the settlement. From a distance, Wae Rebo appears to float above the earth. But life there requires commitment. Food, supplies, construction materials, and visitors all follow the same demanding route through the forest. What looks like a peaceful village in the sky survives because the community works together. From an isolated village, we move to a crowded city that seems to have been built in the only space nature forgot to close. Yanjin, in China's Yunnan province, stretches along the Nangzai River between towering mountain walls. In some areas, the usable strip of land is only a few dozen meters wide. With nowhere else to expand, buildings stand directly beside the river, press against the cliffs, or rise on concrete supports. Homes, schools, stores, and offices follow one long corridor through the valley. More than 100,000 people live in this compressed landscape, where the river can flood and loose rock can fall from the slopes above. Yet Yanjin functions as a living city, not an emergency settlement. Streets remain busy, businesses operate, and families build ordinary routines inside extraordinary geography. From above, the city resembles a thin ribbon trapped between stone and water. Its story is a lesson in urban adaptation. When people cannot reshape the landscape, they reshape the city around it. High in the Andes, the Uros people have found an even more unusual answer to limited land. They live on floating islands in Lake Titicaca, more than 3,800 meters above sea level. These islands are not made from rock, concrete, or soil. They are constructed from layers of totora reeds. Residents bind and stack the reeds into thick floating platforms, then use the same plant to build houses, walkways, docks, and boats. The lower layers slowly decay in the water, so fresh reeds must be added again and again. The island is never truly finished. Maintaining the ground beneath their feet is part of everyday life. Several families may share one island. From a distance, the settlement looks like a giant woven village resting on the lake. The design allowed the Uros to preserve independence and mobility, but it also created a life that depends on constant care. Here, home is not simply built once. It must be renewed continuously. In northeastern Spain, Castellfollit de la Roca stands on ground that feels solid but looks terrifying. The village occupies a narrow basalt ridge about 50 meters above the rivers below. Ancient volcanic lava created the rock, and thousands of years of erosion removed the softer earth around it, leaving a dramatic natural platform. Fewer than 1,000 people live along the ridge. Historic stone houses line a central street, and in some areas the edge of town is only steps from a sheer drop. From the valley, the settlement looks like a stone ship balanced above the landscape. The village has survived wars, rebuilding, and centuries of environmental exposure. Residents did not merely tolerate the cliff, they made it part of the town's identity. Castellfollit shows how a dangerous location can become a source of protection, beauty, and belonging. Now travel far north to Longyearbyen on Norway's Svalbard archipelago, one of the northernmost permanent communities on the planet. Winter does not simply bring shorter days. For months, the sun disappears and the town remains in near total darkness. The cold freezes the ground into permafrost. Outside the settlement, polar bears create a serious danger, so traveling beyond town requires caution and preparation. The frozen soil also explains Longyearbyen's famous burial restrictions. Because bodies do not decompose normally in the permafrost, traditional burials have largely stopped, and people who die there are generally transported elsewhere. Longyearbyen began as a coal mining settlement and later became a center for Arctic research, education, and exploration. Residents still go to work, attend school, shop, and raise families, but every part of life is shaped by the Arctic. Darkness, isolation, and wildlife are not background details. They determine how the community operates. From frozen isolation, we travel into the heat and humidity of the Amazon rainforest. Iquitos, Peru, is a major city with nearly 500,000 residents, yet no highway connects it to the outside world. People and supplies arrive mainly by air or by river. The Amazon and its tributaries serve as enormous natural roads. Passenger boats, cargo vessels, fishing boats, and small river taxis move through the region every day. Along the water, many houses stand on tall supports or float so they can adjust to seasonal flooding. In these neighborhoods, a dock can be more important than a driveway. Iquitos expanded during the rubber boom and became a commercial center deep inside the rainforest. Its size challenges the idea that a large city must be connected by highways. Here, the river performs the work of an entire transportation network. Iquitos is isolated by land, but connected by water. In central Greece, the monasteries of Meteora appear to hang in the sky. They stand on massive sandstone pillars rising hundreds of meters above the plain. Beginning in the 14th century, monks climbed these formations seeking safety, solitude, and separation from conflict below. Building on the pillars required extraordinary effort. Stone, timber, food, and tools were raised using ropes, baskets, ladders, and pulley systems. Eventually, 24 monasteries were established, although only 6 remain preserved and active today. For the monks, the difficult location was the purpose. The height offered protection and created a world devoted to prayer and reflection. Meteora demonstrates how faith can transform an almost unreachable landscape into a permanent community. While Meteora moved life toward the sky, Coober Pedy in South Australia moved it beneath the ground. Summer temperatures in this desert town can reach between 45 and 50 degrees Celsius, about 113 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Instead of spending enormous amounts of energy cooling ordinary buildings, residents carved homes into the soft rock. These underground dwellings, known as dugouts, remain relatively stable in temperature throughout the year. They stay cooler during brutal summers and warmer during cold desert nights. Underground life expanded beyond private homes. Coober Pedy includes subterranean hotels, churches, museums, and businesses. The town developed after opal was discovered in the region, and decades of mining helped create its maze of shafts and tunnels. Above ground, the landscape can appear empty and hostile. Below it, people live in comfort inside rooms carved directly from the earth. On Mount Hang in China, the Hanging Temple takes a different approach to survival. More than 1,500 years ago, builders attached a wooden religious complex to a sheer cliff roughly 70 meters above the ground. From below, the temple appears to balance on thin wooden posts. Its real strength, however, comes from beams anchored deep inside the mountain. Narrow walkways connect the halls, while the cliff helps shield the structure from weather. Its elevated position also reduces exposure to flooding and some falling debris. The Hanging Temple has endured wind, rain, earthquakes, and centuries of change. Every beam and passage reflects careful engineering. Walking through it may feel dangerous, but its survival proves that the builders understood the mountain far better than its appearance suggests. Our final destination may be the most unsettling of all. Aogashima is a small Japanese island in the Pacific Ocean, about 350 kilometers from Tokyo. From the air, it looks like a giant green bowl rising from the sea. Inside that bowl is another volcanic crater, and a small village. Only around 160 to 200 people live on the island. Residents farm, fish, and use geothermal heat for cooking and warmth. The community has a school, a post office, and a small store, but access is limited to boats and helicopters. Rough seas and powerful storms can cut the island off completely. A major eruption in 1785 forced residents to evacuate. Decades later, families returned because the island was their ancestral home. Today, their descendants continue living inside the double caldera of an active volcano. Fertile soil and rich fishing waters support them, but escape options remain limited if nature changes suddenly. After seeing all 10 places, one truth becomes clear. Human beings do not survive extreme environments by ignoring nature. They survive by studying it, respecting it, and redesigning daily life around it. In Wae Rebo, cooperation protects an isolated village. In Yanjin, architecture follows a narrow river valley. On Lake Titicaca, residents rebuild the islands beneath their homes. In Longyearbyen, people organize life around darkness, permafrost, and polar bears. In Coober Pedy, they escape the sun by living underground. And on Aogashima, A community accepts the risk of a volcano because the island is more than dangerous land. It is home. These places may look impossible from a distance, but the people living there do not see themselves as characters in a survival story. They are neighbors, workers, parents, students, farmers, monks, and families continuing traditions built across generations. The landscape may shape their lives, but it does not erase them. So which place would test you the most? The Arctic darkness, the floating islands, the underground desert, the cliffside temple, or the village inside a volcano? And could you call any of them home, even for 1 week?